Hi, and welcome to SaaS Leaders Lounge, the premier podcast for insights into the evolving tech landscape. I'm your host, Ramon, and today we're diving into our AI series with a special focus on audio innovations. We're joined by Jacoby and Struter, CEO and founder of Iris Audio Technologies, a trailblazer in AI-driven audio solutions. Jacoby, it's a privilege to have you on the show today. How are you? And could you share with our listeners where you're joining us from?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm at our HQ in central London.
Fantastic. I'm also in central London as well, so shouldn't be too far from each other, although it is a large space. But
Do these
Jacoby,
things face to face.
it's true. I think on our next season we'll look to do that, but something I should have thought of beforehand. Brilliant. Well, again, thank you again for being here, Jacoby. Let's kick things off with your journey. You're founded Iris Audio Technologies. What sparked your passion for revolutionizing the audio space?
Yeah, I guess in about 2017, I wrote a thesis that our primary source of information was going to shift from visual to audio prior to the podcast boom, audiobooks, and obviously the effects of COVID on remote working. I don't think I predicted it to happen as quickly as it has happened. But really that thesis was backed by two things. One is looking at the effects of sound on the brain and how unique that is to our other senses. And secondly, just the efficiencies of day-to-day life. So we wanted to really, if we were moving into a digital environment of audio being our primary source of information, wanted to see how we could augment that experience for human productivity and human performance. And that was kind of the start of the business was a team of neuroscientists and AI specialists looking at sensory input stimuli.
It's fantastic. I must say, I'm more of an audio learner myself, so I guess it could boost productivity of the likes of me and many others. So your theses, it's great to see you saw the future and what's apparent now. Iris Audio Technologies recently unveiled groundbreaking features. Are you able to delve into these updates and their impact on the competitive AI audio landscape?
Yeah, I guess again, it's probably worth going back into a bit of the history of the business. We started off very much just looking at the neurological response of audio in the real world, and then how that is passive in the digital environment. To the extent that we are the third instrument in listening experience, and listening to music, as an example, is the only time we use the entirety of our brain, and that's why we have these high emotional response. We see sound at the center of every culture, every tribe, makes us laugh, cry, sleep, relax, whatever you're looking for, motivate in the gym. So we started off studying there, and we started looking particularly at professional sports personalities, and how we can induce what we refer to as flow state, or in the zone, as you might say, and that's a neurological response. Where we really perform at the utmost or above, technically up the peak of our abilities. So how do we engage that state of mind through sensory input stimuli? That's kind of where we started. Audio had a high effect on that, and we look at something called binaural phasing. So we can activate the brain, and we did some white papers with Goldsmiths University here in London, and Professor Joydeep Bhattacharma and one of his pupils is Jasmine Tan, who was a specialist in flow and looking at flow in athletes. And we found our original algorithms of how we can heighten binaural phasing from a compressed audio stream in a digital environment could induce this state of flow. That sort of led us on to working with Mount Sinai Hospital and the team of human performance, and the head of human performance there, a chap called David Petrino, who's a real innovator in this space, and how we can affect things like PTSD, stress, anxiety, addiction. So that's kind of where we started, and that sort of led us to working with the Red Bull Formula One team through the Red Bull Institute of Human Performance in Santa Monica, and then looking at the drivers' training in the simulator, and again continue to have in very interesting and successful results on how to train an athlete into hitting this state of flow, or this meditative state where we perform at our best, where we think the technical definition is lose sense of self and time. And while we were working there, we just started analyzing all of their different use of audio, and the most obvious place for innovation was was in their communications from driver to pit wall and then back to the factory in Milton Keynes. And so we developed our AI solution that could intercept any multi-channel radio system and identify what is the human voice in closest proximity to the microphone and remove all of the other disturbance. And as you can imagine, on the Formula One track, it's probably one of the most extreme environments when it comes to noise. And therefore, the lack of confidence in communications was leading them to rely on a pit board with numbers and letters on, communicating with a driver going past at 200 miles an hour, which was highly inefficient. So we built this product and launched it in 2020, February 2020. A lot of success, a lot of hype around how we could bring this efficiency to their comms, and then the world went into lockdown, and it was pretty clear that this technology had use cases in every environment, from people trying to work from home with kids screaming and dogs barking to some of the more mission critical scenarios like emergency services and military, aviation, communications, transportation, etc. So that's kind of where we came from and why we're doing what we're doing today.
Fantastic. I must say, I think you've let me know something new in terms of music uses every part of our brain, and that's why we have such a strong emotional connection to it. I'm very passionate about music, and completely understandable how the emotions can also rise as well when listening to those type of
Yeah,
songs. But
well, there's an interesting part to that because when we listen, we actually have a very different experience individually.
yeah,
Whereas we pretty much see the same thing. Our other senses experience is very similar. When we listen, there are sort of three major components to the reason why we have a different experience from person to person. The first is your position and phase, so your relation to the source of sound and the environment you're around. Is if I was talking to you in person right now, you'd have sound coming from my mouth directly to your ears, but it would also be bouncing off all the surfaces around you. And nobody is in the same position. So that's the first reason. The second reason is our brain then does this process called binaural phasing, which is basically computing between 20 and 30,000 different phases of information on the same frequency waves, and making that make sense, which is why you're aware of your position and your surroundings. If I was you to close your eyes and I was to walk around you, you'd know where I was as I spoke to you. And to stop the world being a rather confusing muddled place. So those are the first two reasons. And then the third reason is this sort of heavily subjective element of why we've nurtured to, I like something that you might not, and vice versa. And so through that process of listening, or how we've evolved to listen, our experience really differs from person to person. But then in a digital environment, you have an artist, in the case of a song, recording from a single point microphone into a mixing board. And that space and that information, all that phase information is lost. So then you have the engineer adds what are fundamentally parlor tricks, right? Panning, reverb, echo, etc., to fill the space and give you an artificial soundscape of a more three-dimensional experience. But in that process, you're not doing the work you do in the real life. And therefore, you lose the engagement, emotional response, the information retention that you'd get in a real world environment.
that's absolutely remarkable. I must say, I think our listeners have definitely been educated within your explanation there. So thank you so much, Jacoby. Just the kind of research links that you've gone into from your work with Mr. Tan, from working with David Petrino, and then also kind of on the ground with the Red Bull team, seeing what can kind of optimize their performance, optimizing communication, obviously. And then I think where you mentioned it embarked into that COVID period where kind of sound become the main means of communication when working from home, where again the work or the kind of studies you did with Red Bull could be applied there. So I think these advancements definitely highlight Iris's leadership in pioneering audio technology and also setting new standards within this AI framework today. But incorporating AI into audio experiences presents unique challenges. Are you able to share how Iris has navigated these obstacles to create unparalleled audio clarity?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious challenges are audio is far more complex than most people really understand, and the different environments that you need to be agnostic to perform in front of vary. As a layer cake technology that sits within a stack of other technologies, whether that's the video conferencing Riverside system we're using today, the headset I have in versus yours, the computer that you're on, the functioning processing power, CPU, memory, all of these things that play in leaves a highly complex way of navigating. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have as a company, is making sure that we're agnostic in the areas we play in. That's the first challenge that we had to overcome. Second to that, you have legacy systems that really don't have the space of memory and CPU, as I just mentioned, that you want to utilize to audio. So making the neural networks that you're building and the AI models incredibly low power, high efficiency is probably the next major challenge to navigate once you've been agnostic as many times as you are. But as you can imagine, there are hundreds of thousands of connotations of system that vary from person to person that you have to make sure you can navigate.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, as you said, it's kind of showcases the or deep understanding of the complexities in AI-driven audio, which also leads me to my next question in terms of AI-driven voice isolation. And we know it differs significantly from traditional noise cancellation. Are you able to explain its advantages and also the technology behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the evolution of noise cancellation, as you referred to it, you probably started with the type of headset you'd find at a gun range or at a construction site. And what they're doing is they're just limiting the transient sounds that would be a loud bang or whatever it may be at one end of the frequency wave. Then Bose and others came along with noise cancelling, which is running a second microphone on the outside of the headset and playing that back to your brain out of phase. It cancels itself out. Think about a signal frequency wave. If you do shift it 180 degrees, you'll get exactly the opposite. And that's why you get that vacuum sound that you get when a set of noise cancelling headsets. So the term noise cancelling is slightly misleading in the fact that you're actually taking more information in rather than less. What we're doing is very different. So that's cancelling the noise for me around me. What we're doing is intercepting a bidirectional or multi-directional communication channel and sitting at the center and identifying voice with AI and noise, separating the two out and just leaving you with one. So if I was to be running the technology right now on my computer, there could be all kinds of things going on around me and you'd hear nothing but my isolated voice and vice versa. So it's a very different way of looking at communication or voice isolation. And that's why we call it voice isolation rather than noise cancelling, because we're really identifying the human voice through hundreds and thousands of hours of different voices and also hundreds of thousands of hours of every noise you can imagine, from keyboard tapping to Formula One engines, helicopters, kids screaming, dogs barking, you name it, and really understanding, being able to separate the two. The challenge within that is if you have a compressed audio stream and you start removing information, you're left with what can be a very robotic, hard to understand sound. Almost harder to understand than the noisy original. So the challenge is to do that in real time, which is considered less than 30 milliseconds is zero latency to the telco industry. Anything below 100 milliseconds, the brain, depending on the quality of your ears, or as we call in the industry, a golden ear, won't notice, but below 30 milliseconds is really considered zero latency. So you've got to do that in a very short period of time without destroying the audio stream or missing any of the information, which is where the complexities to the neural networks lie.
So again, incredibly insightful. I think something I've taken in from what you said is that noise cancellation is not actually cancelling noise, but giving us even more noise from playing that second microphone on the earphone itself. But I think it's interesting to know such
There's a
advanced.
piece
Sorry.
to that I think is worth discussing, and I actually
Yeah.
find quite interesting is we think of sound and music as a remedy to stress, anxiety, to step out, to be present in the moment, and it's often used for those things. When you're using noise cancelling headsets, because of the additional frequency waves going into your brain, you actually put your brain into more of a state of stress rather than a straight state of calm. So although it's useful on an aeroplane and while trying to have a conversation with someone in a noisy environment, it is actually not benefiting you in the
Yeah,
way that.
no, that completely explains. My partner gave birth around 6 or 7 weeks ago, and her plan was to have music in the delivery room. But whilst the birth was going on, I think that's the first thing, she couldn't take them, or she wanted the noise off. It was not helping whatsoever. So I guess it's a part of what you mentioned that affected her, where she was listening before in those calm rooms, with kind of everything in place how she wanted it to be. I guess it had a different effect from when you're actually delivering a baby and your stress levels are actually reacting to the music exactly. So yeah, thank you very much. It's something I'll discuss with my partner later and let her know that's the reason why as well. Brilliant. Looking forward, Jacoby, how do you see AI shaping the future of audio technologies, and what role will Iris play in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a number of other products coming to market beyond this, which is probably a bit early to talk about now. But as we think of augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., sound is such a key part to the emotional engagement into a product and creating that real life feeling. It can't be ignored. I would argue it has been ignored to the extent that visual has been, that you've seen that level of innovation. But it's an integral part to experience, right? And that's only highlighted by the neurological response we see from audio compared to visual in terms of brain activity and all of the other things. There's some interesting testing around GSR testing, which is sensing your emotional response, and the reactions that you get off sound is significantly more than you might from a visual scape that's presented in front of you. So
Yeah.
it is integral. There's some complexities to it. Sound, as I say, is not as simple. Timing is integral to it, so that we don't get motion sickness. You've got the timing out, those kind of things. So there's a lot of innovation to come in this space. AI is inevitably a tool that we're seeing grow across every industry, and although it is a replacement in some for human voice, what we're actually seeing in a sector that we work in extensively is in the call and contact center space. Although you're seeing the growth of bots taking up the simpler conversations, solving a quick problem, what we're also seeing is, with the closure of branches for many companies, your only point of interaction with your client is by voice through your call center operations. And therefore, these are more premium conversations. They're longer, more complex, more technical conversations. And therefore, the power of AI to enhance that, not just replace it, becomes an interesting conversation. And that's why, despite the growth of AI and bots, we're still seeing growth in that particular sector.
Completely agree
I
with
think people
Soap.
fundamentally are going to continue to want to speak to people, right?
Yeah,
We're naturally communicative people.
definitely.
So.
Yeah, especially in my line of work, it makes a massive difference, whether you're communicating via email or LinkedIn chat, to actually having someone on the phone. I think the trust is a key element as well that's installed. Funny
Yeah,
enough, you
I'm one of
mentioned
those old-fashioned people who still likes to pick up the phone to call people, which is almost considered in the younger generation as invasive. But yeah, I like to speak to someone. I find it more efficient.
Yeah, not at all. You're seeing cold calling come back heavily as well, and I think that's the reason a lot of people have that characteristic, I must say. And thank you so much for touching on VR. As funny enough, the previous guest on the show was a founder of a VR organization, and he's got a question in regards to audio and VR, which I'll be asking you later on in this discussion today. Now to move on to kind of our light-hearted quick-fire section, it would be great to understand you behind the boardroom with a few quick-fire questions. Are you ready to begin?
Yeah,
Brilliant. So, do you prefer crossword puzzles or Sudoku?
crossword puzzles. I'm addicted to that New York Times app, the word or the crossword, but I don't love the Sudoku.
Yeah, understood. Is it VR gaming if you tried it, or console gaming if you like games at all, to be honest?
I'm not a gamer.
Yeah,
Never game.
understood.
Sorry.
Me as well. No, that's fine. Me as well, to be honest. Do you prefer texting or video calling? I could kind of assume the answer.
Um, well, it depends on the conversation. I'm going to say texting. Yeah, I like to pick up the
Right.
phone and speak to someone. I don't love to stand with a phone in front of my face doing a video
Funny.
call.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, to be honest. Do you prefer singing or playing an instrument, especially as you founded a record company as well, or the director, should I say, of Housekeeping Records?
Yeah, I'm a terrible singer. I feel like it's one of the great superpowers of life that I would always love. I play a number of instruments. I used to produce music and do sometimes still for the label. So yeah, playing instruments.
Brilliant. I must say, yeah, it is a dream to be able to sing. I think that's a ticket to kind of stardom, I guess. If
Mhm.
well, you can shape the octaves, as they say, but I think that's one of the biggest talents existing. So,
I
would you
agree.
prefer to
I agree. Always
fantastic?
envious.
Tell me about. Who's your favorite artist, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, good question. Um, I mean, I like electronic music, so you know, God, my favorite. I'm a big fan of someone called Nico Stojan, who's probably someone you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Who's,
No,
who's
I'm
a
a massive
friend
fan.
who I, you know, Nico.
No, I was gonna say I'm a massive fan of music, so I'm gonna look into his name and actually research that. Definitely, I like all different types of music, from rock to opera to pop to rap. But yeah, I'll definitely take a listen of Nico. And you said he's your friend?
Well, yeah, we played together a few times, and we've spent some days in the studio together. I think he's just got amazing talent. German Berlin-based DJ producer who I just think is excellent at what he does.
Brilliant. A good bit of promo here for him as well. I'll definitely ensure to listen to that. I may even plug it in as well on that part you mentioned. So we've only got a few questions left, but in terms of how you prefer to eat, is it more dine-ins or delivery do you prefer?
It's time-based, right? I'm running a startup in a growth stage, so if I get time to have out for dinner, that's lovely with my friends. But most of the time, I'm working late and ordering Deliveroo. I'm a terrible cook, so yeah, it's only two options on the table.
Brilliant. Understood completely. I know some people like to merge their work with business by probably utilizing the business card with those meetings at dinners, but I think it's a way to waste time. I must say, it can be done so much
I couldn't
quicker and
agree
it's so
more.
much more expensive.
Yeah, and I'd also argue that those days are over, particularly fast-moving tech. That those days don't really exist as
It's
much.
true.
Not in my world, anyway.
Yeah, very true. I agree. Do you prefer reality shows or game shows if you find time to watch TV, I guess?
I don't watch much TV. I like sport. I watch football, rugby, cricket, but American sport, American football. But yeah, no, otherwise I don't watch television.
Yes. Well, it sounds like you've got no time for reality TVs or game shows by watching every type of sport. And last question, being a music person again, do you prefer silent retreats or music festivals?
Well, I like both. I like both. I've done a couple of Vipassana retreats. I think that's an amazing experience, very challenging, and one of the greatest things you can do. But I'm also usually right. I like to music festival, especially with the collective consciousness of and the energy that you get from all the other people. So I can't decide on that one.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think great answers throughout. It definitely builds more of a picture of yourself. We also like to keep a collaborative nature on the SAS Leaders Lounge. So we always have the previous guest ask a question to the following, and you have a chance to ask a question again to who's going to be next. Our previous guest was a gentleman called Mario Ramick. He's the founder of Takeaway Reality. They're basically an X or a VR and XR consultation and design company based in London as well. But he's posed an intriguing question for you about the integration of sound in AR and VR technologies. How do you envision enhancing audio experiences in these domains?
Um, well, I mean, I guess it's highly important, and I've already touched on that because the emotional engagement that you need to get to create an alternative reality. In terms of the ongoing engagement, there's a huge complexity to it. If you have just simply on the technology that we're selling at the moment. If you have hundreds of users in the same environment, also bringing their background noise into that environment, you're quickly going to be experiencing something that's terrible. So you need to have real understanding of the isolation of the voice and the communication that's coming in, but also spatial engagement. So where you place the audio in the environment, again, is going to make a significant change to the experience. So I would argue that it's as important as the visual aspect, and therefore needs the same attention and innovation.
Brilliant answer. I must say, especially thinking about where that audio is placed within that virtual world affects the kind of quality of it. It's something, or expands the mind frame to think on those lengths. For our next guest, we have a lady called Rachel Cossa, and she's the CEO of an organization called Virtual Sapiens. She also founded the organization, and they basically leverage AI or ML technologies to help professionals and teams assess and improve their virtual presence. What would your question be for Rachel on our next episode?
I tell you what, I always like the question to a founder of how they value culture over strategy, and how much attention they put into developing the culture within their business. It sounds like Rachel also works with other companies, so is looking at their own experience and passing it on. So I think that would be my question.
Brilliant. And please do tune in to our next episode to find out Rachel's answer to your question. If there's more information needed from either Mario or Rachel, I'll be sure to connect you both together. And we're also holding roundtable discussions later down the line. Hopefully you'll all be involved in as well. But before we conclude, Jacoby, are you able to share where our listeners can find more about you and the pioneering works at Iris Audio Technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out our website, iris.audio. And you'll be able to understand the kind of companies we're working with, what we're doing, our latest innovation as we announce them. So,
brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was great.
It's been a pleasure.
Good luck with Rachel, and yeah, keep us posted on the roundtables. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing.
Most definitely. We've got an exciting lineup of guests, just like Rachel and also like yourself, talking to our audience, and where we'll be bringing insights into the next wave of technology. So until next time, keep exploring the boundaries of innovation and leadership in the SaaS world, and goodbye for now. Thank you so much for your time today, Jacoby. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Take care.